powered by Reviting, streaming from the Reviting Digital Studio. It's the David Daily. Exploring frontier technology, artificial intelligence, quantum innovation, and the intersection of faith, funding, and the future. Here's your host, David Goki.
Welcome to the David Daily Show. Another wonderful episode today. I'm incredibly excited and jazzed up to have one of my favorite guests on the show. We've done over 50 episodes, so if you're tuning in for the first time, go ahead and let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from. Go ahead and like this, maybe share it out. And if you're watching on the replay or listening on Spotify, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. That would really mean a lot for us as we're an early show and podcast. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce my special guest today, who is Greg Cootsona, and he is the AI director and executive director of AI and Faith, the nonprofit that we showcase here on the show. So without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and bring you right up on stage and get things started here. Greg, nice to have you on the show.
It's great to be in the show with you. Thanks for your invitation, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, it's going to be a really good one. We meet every month, sometimes twice a month as well. And it's really just wonderful to have your expertise. Now, why don't you tell the audience just a little bit about your background and kind of how you got into AI and Faith to begin with?
Well, I have this background of first of all, growing up in the Silicon Valley and imbibing the you might say good news or the gospel of Silicon Valley, in the sense that we can do anything. We have been chosen in some ways, if we grow up in this region, to solve every problem. And for me, that didn't include any kind of spiritual connection for many years. And so when I did become a person of faith, when I went to college, I was really fascinated for how do you bring together technology and science with, for me, my Christian faith. So throughout, the period since then, I did a PhD in science and technology and how it connects with philosophy and religion and theological reflection. I've served as a pastor in churches. I've started a nonprofit that connects, before AI and Faith, that connects science with spiritual growth in Christian churches. And I've also taught in the university in sociology and philosophy, and particularly in science, technology, and religion. So all that came together when this opportunity to be executive director of AI and Faith came to my mind, came to my consciousness, as it were. People mentioned it to me, and it's been an amazing ride for the past 7 months to guide this organization that seeks to bring the wisdom of religious traditions to advance human dignity, flourishing, and agency in an AI world. I hope I answered your question, David.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful, actually. And it's just a blessing to have you on the show and actually carrying that torch forward. David Brenner is kind of the founder as well. And I met back when I was at Missional AI, and I had the beautiful opportunity to speak actually on this concept of what does AI ethics mean from a Christian and biblical worldview, and how do we integrate AI ethics and morals into the technology and bring religion to the conversation, not just Christian faith, but the 5 majors, which are Buddhism, right, Hinduism, Judaism, right, and Christianity and Catholicism, but also how do we integrate the world's wisdom that goes beyond that into technology? So when you first heard that mission, Greg, like what was it really about that stood out to you that you're like, you know what? I'm in a career shift. Maybe I want to move to the next thing. Like, why was it that you decided AI and Faith was where you were going to call home for a little bit?
Ultimately, it brought together a lot of my interests in terms of connecting, you might say, these two languages that are spoken in our culture: the language of technology, science, and the language of faith. And just to add one more, perhaps, David, to what you said. So Islam is also one other of our major religions that we engage with. So for me, I'm always intrigued with bringing together different forms of human life and of human interaction and creativity, and bringing together what some people would consider maybe incompatible or independent kinds of languages, that again of technology and faith. I love seeing that happen, and it makes a lot of sense when you look at this, perhaps the most contemporary technology taking on the wisdom of ancient faith that's been tested over centuries and millennia. There's a powerful combination that can happen, and I'm thankful to be guiding this organization, which has been in existence since 2018, and to see all that's gone before in creating a network of 220 experts in 20 different countries that can do exactly what I'm talking about, bringing the wisdom of theological religious traditions to connect with the language and the insights and the influence of AI.
Yeah, I like that. And thanks for as I was hurling those 5 religions off, I was like, I know I'm missing one. Which one is it? And of course, we definitely cannot forget our Muslim and Islam family as well. So thank you for
Yeah,
that. And what
yeah,
I've enjoyed a lot is actually reading a little bit of the Quran and getting to actually understand more of the religious texts, the religious viewpoints, especially in an ever emerging world and modern world. So yeah, I'm excited to have you on this show today. And I just want to say this conversation is really not about fear, right? It's about understanding religion and faith. It's about bringing the spirituality, the culture, the science, the meaning, and of course, the human flourishing. And of course, how do we move forward as humans and as people? Because that's kind of the thing that brings us all together. So, Greg, I just want to say welcome to the show. And for those of you just watching, we do have a simple format. We like to break this down into 3 simple segments. We talk about funding, we talk about faith, and we talk about future. So we're gonna. Did you know that you can go live?
Time to talk about funding.
There we go, a little clicky on the back end. We've got a live show, which is beautiful. So, Greg, we've got this first topic, which we kind of worked on together, which is AI culture and value creation in emerging markets. So, when you talk about a nonprofit and creating value in a world like today, what exactly does that mean for you?
yes. I mean, the thing about a nonprofit and the way it's structured is that it's for the public good, and that's one of the parts of my work that I take really seriously. That we are operating for the good of the wider public. This is why you have all the tax, considerations and privileges for a nonprofit. So, value creation. We are seeking to create a value for our culture, certainly for the United States, but also beyond the boundaries of the United States. It's different, of course, from creating the kind of value that a for-profit company does, which is incredible. We're saying, what can we do for the common good? What can we do for the worlds that we live in? How can we bring human flourishing and dignity and agency? It's part of our mission. How can we bring those to the development of AI? And in the light of this hundreds of millions of dollars that are being poured into AI this year, it could be up to $1 billion, I'm told, of new investment. How do we parallel that with human flourishing, human capital, human insight? And one would say in that the ability to transcend and move into something beyond what is just the experience, through the beyond the human experience to something that's awe-inspiring, transcendent, and for many people has the presence of God in it. So I think that's a way that we are advancing a type of capital in this AI age.
Yeah, I like that. And just kind of bringing up some comments here, we have someone who said, "Hey, there is no God," and I'm really glad you mentioned that because if you're an atheist or if you're an agnostic, there actually is space for you at the table because believe it or not, agnostics and atheists still have a moral and ethical compass. And that's why
Absolutely.
I really love AI and faith is because it does bring those together. So I'm curious from your perspective, why is it important to include the atheists and the agnostics in a conversation around morality and ethics?
Well, I mean, for one thing, we share the world together, and we will do better as we connect with people of all commitments, whether that's a religious commitment or a non-religious one. As I mentioned earlier, I grew up in the Silicon Valley. I didn't say that my family was not a religious family, so I have a lot of just sympathy, by which I mean it's in me to know the people who don't share my religious convictions have a lot to bring to the conversation. That's certainly true in my academic work as well. And actually, one of the things that's so fascinating about an interfaith organization like ours, excuse me, is that often Buddhists will say they're non-theistic. There's a whole stream of Buddhism that's very prominent that does not have belief in God. You could call that atheistic if you want, but I would prefer non-theistic, meaning a God figure is just not a part of what they do in their religious life. So, excuse me. So even quote religious inputs can sometimes be non-theistic as well.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great perspective as well, because actually, when you think about interfaith and actually someone who's being non faith, what's great about that is whether you are in a religion that has a very discrete set of practices and rituals and rhythms, or if you're maybe more a person of faith where you really have strong beliefs that are greater than yourself, or if you have a spiritual practice that brings you closer to the creator, to the divine, there definitely is space for you at the table. I really like what Brad Smith said over at Microsoft. He said, what, we want the religions of the world to have a seat at the conversation at the table when it comes to building technology. And actually, you actually sit at the intersection of this beautiful space of like AI and neuroscience. And I think it was like what, psychology as well and human behavior. So tell us a little bit more about how did that journey begin for you, Greg?
One of the parts of connecting with neuroscience was simply my study of science and religion, which, as I mentioned, has been an ongoing academic study for about 30 years. And in the last few years, I've been co-teaching more for a popular teaching setting with a neuroscientist, Leonard Matheson, who was at Washington University of St. Louis for a long time. Excuse me, I'm coming off of a cold, so I've got a bit of a cough. So what Leonard and I did was to demonstrate this connection between neuroscience and spirituality. And so I began to be interested more in deepening what that connection looks like and learning from him what it looks like on a practical level and on a theoretical level. There's a talk, by the way, my TEDx Walden Pond talk that looks at the neurospirituality of love and how we are created or we are designed or we are evolved, use a language that works in this context for you, to have neurotransmitters that bind us together. And so that's one aspect of studying neuroscience and spirituality, because certainly love is such a part of spirituality. Now, when I then connect that with, the whole importance of neural networks in AI, it becomes fascinating how the brain and the neural networks of artificial intelligence have commonalities. So I am, fascinated to take this now into the work that I do. And because AI is just so vast, I am constantly learning, constantly asking questions, and it's an amazing thing. So that's one way that my background in terms of connecting neuroscience and spiritual life have then brought me into this connection now with artificial intelligence and spirituality.
Nice. Yeah, having that neuroscience perspective to be able to say, yeah, this is how the science of the brain is actually bringing us together. And this is how we see the psychology of human behavior and culture coming together. I mean, that's why we do the show. That's why you're here. And actually, it's nice to see a little bit of the human element of clearing your throat or not being so scripted, because there is a lot of bots out there, a lot of fakes, but we are real. We this is coming to you live. So I'm curious, Greg, there's a question out there that says, hey, AI and faith, many might assume conflict between those two, right? In fact, I'm working on a little concept here called one God and and AI, or God versus AI. So why do you think that those conversations around AI and faith matter now more than maybe ever before, arguably?
Yes, yes. I mean, I think this parallels a lot of the work I've done in other years with science and religion. And so, a lot of people, when I was teaching at the university, I'd ask, what do you think is the relationship between science and religion? And very often my students would default to, well, there's a conflict between them, And what was interesting then would be to bring these prominent scientists who are people of faith into the conversation and into the study, and people would say, oh, there are ways to bring these two spheres together. And I think the importance of that in science and religion, and I'll just tie that in with technology and religion, is we have a country that, though we are turning more and more non-religious, still is predominantly religious. Most people in our country and throughout the world have a religious affiliation of some sort or identification. So so it's like, by the way, I'm getting some cough drops delivered to me for this moment. So anyway, and so we want to make sure that we reduce that conflict as much as possible. That we have a country and a culture in which technology and science are received. And so I think at a kind of just strategic level, it's important to see this connection for people between them. Now, it's interesting, statistics demonstrate that people who are most religiously engaged in our country actually are the most, some of the most prominent constituencies, demographics of being appreciative of AI and what it can bring. So some of that conflict narrative is probably not as present as it might seem to people who are not religious. So anyway, I just think it's important because we want to see, our country flourish and as a leader in AI, have all voices and all people of different perspectives engaged in it. And that's why I think when people have this perhaps intuitive sense that there's a conflict between AI and religious faith, we could begin to demonstrate that doesn't need to be the case.
Yeah, that's so good. I was just gonna ask you, was that AI that delivered your cough drops to you? It's so fun. I saw you like maybe sending a text message or something,
Well,
and that's the
I just
beauty
have
of
to
it.
say, David, we're verifying that this is not a bot show, right? So I'm
Okay,
coughing
nice,
on mic. I've got a
nice.
cough drop now. So here we are. We're going live. That's how live interviews go, right?
Yeah, no, I love it. No, I was just saying, I was thinking maybe your agentic workflows actually had like a robotics component to them. But yeah, I really appreciate that perspective just to say, hey, look, we are called a faith organization, but we're actually quite inclusive. And across our 220 plus experts, we do have a very solid sample set. And I can speak, authentically and authoritatively as well, having been with the organization for 3 years now, to say that, yeah, we have a very diverse organization. And in fact, if you want to hear more, I would encourage you to go check out our AI and Faith podcast. Go ahead and check out the AI Faith podcast. You can check that out on all major platforms. Just search AI and Faith. We have a really beautiful and wonderful episodic content there where we get to interview experts all across the world and globe, bringing thought leadership to a earbud near you. And if you're listening to the car, thank you so much for liking and subscribing. Okay, so we're going to get right to a couple more thoughts here. But before we do that, Greg, we had an interesting comment. Someone in the comments said, hey, I want to hear more about your guitars. So tell us a little bit about the culture of guitars. Why does music matter to you?
Oh, I love that. So across from me, the other direction is the drum set. So I'm actually more of a drummer than a bass player or guitarist. So I love music. I've actually played music professionally. I started playing music professionally or semi-professionally or whatever from about, I don't know, decades ago when I was a teenager. And so I find music to be such an important part of human life. I was just reading in Ian McGilchrist's amazing book, The Master and His Emissary, that it's possible that singing preceded, speaking in human life. And so for me, music is just basic. And I think one of the things we want to make sure we continue in this AI world is we don't lose things like creating music. So as I put up the guitars here, they're aspirational. They're the direction I'm moving in terms of new music, and I want to make sure that we, allow space for people just to enjoy life, create music, and of course to engage with live music as it exists. So music is important for human beings. Sharing music is important, and we want to make sure we have like verifiable human music that continues to exist. So I hope I responded to that comment.
Yeah, no, that's good. I know our audience is going to care about that. We have a lot of artists and creatives who watch this show, a lot of hobbyists as well. I'm a musician myself, and I do love and enjoy music. And there really
David, what
is
do you play? What's
I
your
play
instrument?
brass instruments, so
Yeah.
mostly trombone, trumpet, baritone. For a while there, I was actually playing the drum set as well. So I do like the rhythm section, of course. But yeah, in terms of the culture of kind of these conversations and debates we have, right? These brown bags, these luncheons, these in-person meetings and conferences. Literally every month, there's something going on every week, which you can find out more on our website. But I was curious today, Greg, what cultural shift are you seeing in this intersection of AI and faith?
That's a great question. Because there are so many answers that immediately come to mind. I'm trying to sort through them. I mean, I think one of the things, I'll go a little bit in terms of threat to start, a little bit negative. That's okay. Is that I think there's a growing resistance to AI and deep concern. And in the past month or so, we've actually seen some, movements of violence or violent actions about AI, like Sam Altman's house being, have a Molotov cocktail thrown at it and so on. And I think what's happening is there's a disconnect between some AI creators and the the broader public. And so I want part of AI and faith's work is how can we help there to be a better connection between AI creators and what people on the street, as it were, are seeing. So that's one thing that I think religious communities are particularly engaged with. We tend to be, as people in religious communities, going to connect with a broad, swath of people in our country, and so we can really be part of that conversation. I think for me as a person who's stewarding this organization, one of the questions that we're looking at as agentic AI really emerges more and more prominently is what does it mean to be human? And so much of what it means to be human in various religious traditions has been about agency, making changes, doing ethical action. And I think I'm excited to see in what ways we can partner with AI to be more agentic toward human flourishing, dignity, and agency in the world. And there's a concept that Thomas Malone from MIT has called superminds, where throughout human history we've been able to connect together. Even the fact that we're speaking is one of the ways that human beings connect beyond other animals. That we can share knowledge, we can pass knowledge on. And so now we have this opportunity to connect with AI, and I think to elevate what we can do as human beings, not to be taken over by AI, but to elevate through connecting with artificial intelligence. To me, that's a very consistent idea with, I'll just speak as a Christian, with the importance of community and connection with these tools and devices throughout Christian history. And I think that's an exciting interface of human agency not being lost, but being enhanced through connection with AI.
Yeah, I like that. I like that you pulled out the first thing was like, yeah, there are some real challenges, and tech leadership is one of those things where these technologists are making a lot of these decisions, which is why we need you, the viewer, the listener, to speak up, to incorporate your faith traditions, your faith views in the technology that you're utilizing, both from a simple, very simple point of view of if you're in these technology tools, actually put in your faith beliefs and perspectives into the tool and say, how can I create better technology with my faith? But then furthermore, also like raising your hand and being bold to step up to the table. And so I was curious, there's a question that I had seen what is something that we don't think humanity will ever be able to outsource to AI?
That is a question that I answer with some trepidation, because every time we've set a standard with technology, it's hard to bet against technology in some ways, not achieving that. Nonetheless, I think as I look at human development through time, we have been at our best when we've been in community. And one of the reasons that we basically have survived as a species is that we're so social and that we have empathy. So I'll go back to a statement that Margaret Mead, the anthropologist, made. She said, the beginning of true humanity, I'm paraphrasing now, was when she found a femur bone that had been healed. Now, what does that mean? It meant that somebody in this hunter-gatherer community that she was studying had broken their leg, and that the community had spent the 6 weeks minimum that it takes to heal a bone for that person in the community to be restored to then the work that they were doing, and the life that they were living as a community together. So we do best when we flourish. And I think that is not going to be replaced by artificial intelligence. Of course, chatbots will get better. Of course, if robotics gets better, it will feel more and more like these are, human, or very human-like. And of course, we know that 1/3 of teens have an ongoing friendship or romantic relationship with a chatbot right now. But I would say, for true human flourishing, we need in-person community. We need to be with other human beings, and I don't think that's ever going to be replaceable, just because of who we are as Homo sapiens.
Yeah, so much comes to my mind. I'm glad you said that. And for those of you tuning in, we're here with Greg, the executive director of AI and Faith, a nonprofit that I really love and appreciate. And we're talking about love, actually, and what it means for human connection. And I think that might actually be a good segue into our second topic, which our second topic typically has to do with, or our second area of focus is like the faith topic. So yeah, of course, we're going to be maybe more heavily on faith, but we're going to talk about some leadership principles in faith.
Focusing on faith for a moment.
Okay, you mentioned Sam Altman. There are many leaders in AI and tech today. I don't want to go through a list and name them all because I will undoubtedly miss some. But in your mind, what does tech leadership with the faith point of view actually mean? And for those listening who are considering integrating their particular religious background into their technology, what would you say to those viewers listening?
I mean, partly my mind goes back to the meeting that I was in March, at the end of March at Anthropic. It's a day and a half of meeting with 14 other Christian leaders and people from Anthropic at various levels of the company, all levels of the company, and pondering what it means for faith to enter in this case, into their AI, model, Claude, the Claude Constitution, and so on. And excuse me, speaking back to leadership particularly, I think leadership in AI will do well as it engages with the fact that there is a large percentage of the American population that is motivated by faith. And so I was encouraged by this meeting to see how could we be part of giving feedback. And I've written about this, other people have written about it who were there. It was a very interactive interchange. There were questions that Anthropic come to that they have, they frankly said, we don't quite know how to answer them, and we'd love to have some religious and theological input. Let me also say that they've since had meetings with a variety of religious leaders, not just Christian leaders. So to me, a good leadership in AI will be bringing in these voices of religious traditions and seeing in what ways they can be part of the models. They can be part of just the way the company in some ways sees itself. And if we can even say this, the way the models see themselves. Now we're getting to kind of, a little bit of a metaphysical question, but But there's some truth to that statement.
Metaphysical questions. I love metaphysical questions, especially the existence of humans, right? And also, if we're just to say, like, do the bots actually know that they exist? Are they sentient? Are we going to get to a place of AGI? But we're going to address some of those questions in our future text segment right after this one. But I was curious, maybe just focusing more in on the spiritual aspect. What's one of the challenges, or maybe some of the challenges, spiritually speaking, in the midst of this digital age?
I think one of the challenges is, are we going to keep our humanity? So there's two scenarios of AI that are very prominent in my mind through film. There's the Terminator scenario. I mean, which is so in some ways the Matrix. These go back, decades now. But the idea that AI will dominate us, especially militarily, and I don't think there's a non-zero. I mean, there's a possibility of that happening. I don't want to say it's impossible, but there's the other scenario that I find actually even more compelling and probably more proximate, which is the Wall-E scenario. The Pixar movie about how AI and technology take over human life so that we lose all agency, all courage, all ability. We just float around in these chairs and let the technology manage us. So I've written this piece that I call an AI made for us in light of more of the Wall-E scenario. And I'm joined by a lot of other people who have mentioned this. So I don't want to say this is some unique idea, but it's the idea particularly that what does it mean to utilize AI, to see it as a human creation, as a good human creation that supports humanity? In one of the Gospels, the writings about Jesus, there was this conversation between Jesus and the religious leaders about the Jewish day of rest, the Sabbath. And Jesus makes this statement that I find so important. The Sabbath was made for humankind, not humankind for the Sabbath. The Sabbath, this practice, was made for humanity. And by analogy, we can see AI as something made for us to flourish, not us for it. So again, not falling into the scenario in which we give away all our agency, all our thoughts, all our reasoning to artificial intelligence, but we use it as a partner because it's made for us. That's how this was created. The great technological breakthrough of AI is something that can serve us. So spiritually, I think this is really important. I think when we give over agency to another, to technology in this case, we're losing a part of what it is to be spiritually alive as a human being. But when we utilize technology and as I was saying, partner with it in some ways, I think that has spiritual positive implications. I think it connects with what Jesus was saying in this particular interchange that we read about. And I think it's a powerful spiritual insight that can really guide people of faith as they connect with artificial intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Especially because, yeah, bots, do they want to rest? Yeah, maybe they do. Sometimes they get a little lazy. But I just pulled this up on your Substack. So if you're looking to read your theological manifesto, just pulling this up, and you're exactly right. You're referencing Mark 2:27 here, and really just talking about your Silicon Valley background. And then, of course, you get more into it in terms of like, what are the two sides to AI, and kind of what does that actually mean to continue to maybe maintain that human element in the midst of technology and technology taking over. I really appreciate Dr. Gretchen Huizinga's perspective on this, where she wrote this paper on righteous AI. It's a paper I reference quite often, where you kind of have three tiers, right? You have this tier of, okay, we have machine intelligence. We all kind of know machine intelligence. We've all seen a machine that sometimes can be unintelligent. We also have human intelligence, right? Okay, and that human intelligence, yeah, we made the machine, so we kind of, supersede that of the machine. But we also have divine intelligence, which supersedes both humans and machines. And it's important that we understand that concept, which, by the way, this is a PhD paper, so I'm not just making this up. And what I really like about that approach, Greg, is that it sets a framework for how we think about AGI and the human components of technology. I'm curious, what does divine intelligence mean to you?
Yes, yes. And you mind if I answer about divine intelligence and just say one more thing about spirituality and Sabbath,
Of
if that's
course.
okay? Because I think they'll be related. So, this idea of Sabbath and breaks is going to be incredibly important as AI becomes more prominent in our life. And one way that's happening for some people is to have all these, AI agents working in the background. And there's been recent articles, for example, from the Harvard Business School about how people are engaging that's engaging a level of stress. Like, I have to be more efficient, so I want to make sure I protect my job, so I have AI agents working all the time in the background, and then I have to be working as fast as them. I have to be working as many hours as them. And again, great if you know Claude can improve your productivity, but there's this tradition of Sabbath in the Jewish faith that's important, that we, in order to have our bodies and thus our brains work well, we need breaks. In Islam, there's the 5 daily prayers. That's a way of reorienting our lives around a rhythm. And so, you think about the Buddhist idea of the beginner's mind. That's this concept that we've got to take breaks, potentially, partly, to get a new perspective. And that's what pulling away from the stream of technology can do. I would also add to that, just neuroscientifically, if you're loading yourself up with, it's called allostatic load. If you have all this stuff in your mind from your cell phone, from an AI agent that's working, that you're continually checking in with, you're not going to get to the kind of brain activity that's going to get you into deeper spaces. And here's where I would move then to divine intelligence. So I think if we want to think the thoughts of God, if you might want to say, which even as a Christian that respects the difference between creator and creature, we can enter into this connection with God and the divine and divine intelligence. That's part of our tradition through meditation, through spiritual breaks. This is a deep part of many spiritual traditions. In fact, I would put it this way: if we want to find anything deeply spiritual, we need to take breaks. We need to calm ourselves. The tradition of mindfulness in Buddhism has been very prominent in the tech world and beyond, because it says, let's listen for that deeper, still voice that moves when we silence ourselves and when we take a moment to listen. There's a great parable from the philosopher Soren Kierkegaard that I draw on. He said there was a man who prayed, and at first he thought prayer was talking, but then he got quiet and he realized that prayer is listening. So if we want to move into divine intelligence and tapping into what God is speaking, of course we draw on scripture, of course we draw on worship, but we also draw on that ability to silence and to rest and to listen.
So good. I love that. I was just thinking along those lines as well. So 4 years ago, when I was at Microsoft coding frantically every week, 100 hours a week, I loved it. Would definitely go back again. It reminds me that now today, those 1,000 lines of code in 100 hours, with just 5 to maybe 1 hour, right? We have a 1 to 100 multiple. And I sat here yesterday thinking, okay, so all that time savings, I'm just being more efficient and doing even more with tech. And that reminder of not just the weekly rest, but the daily rhythms, the monthly, the quarterly, scheduling those in and being consistent with that so that you can prioritize health and happiness. Yeah, that's such an important aspect. And it will deepen the human connection as well, I believe, right? Because we need to be connected to self and to God and others. And kind of this notion of technology, maybe, in 50 years from now, will be, archaeologists will be digging up data centers, asking ourselves, like, why do we have millions and hundreds of thousands of square feet of technology, just sitting in these massive buildings? So I'm curious then, to build on that, what's maybe a spiritual belief or a faith belief that maybe you've changed your mind about?
Well, I think one of the thing, excuse me, one of the things about my approach to faith is that excuse me, let me do this. Let me clear for a minute. Um, is that it is an emerging and developing, experience. So my training in music is in jazz, and of course, the key to jazz is improvisation. Improvisation means that you're constantly, uh, you know, composing as you play. So improvisation, I'll go back to your question. This does relate, just so you know. Improvisation means that you have the structure of the song that changes. You have your own, work that you've done to create competency, and then if you're in a combo or whatever, you're listening to other musicians. So it's this ongoing sense of improv, of development, of listening. It's based on hope. It's based on hope that what you're creating is better even than what was preceding, that the future could be better than the past. That's improvisation. It's always been important in communities of where the current situation is not as good as it needs to be. There's injustice. For example, in the Black community, this is where, of course, jazz emerged because of oppression and so on. So I look at my relationship with God as one of improvisation by, the great improviser in the cosmos is the Holy Spirit that continues to unveil how we are to live, how life is to be unfolded. And so I think it's a spiritual approach that I've continued to develop, maybe, is that, to answer your question, is that we need to understand in what ways God is continually working with us and creating new insights and new improvisational hope in the world. I would, if you want to go there, I could combine this also with quantum physics. As its
Let's
element.
go there.
Yeah, should we go there? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
let's go there. Let's bring the neuroscience and metaphysics into the tech and the AI. I love that. That's like your third pillar. It's like technology, faith, and brain science.
yeah, I mean, let's go with neuroscience first. Again, back to my colleague Leonard Matheson, the neuroscientist. One thing he taught me was that the whole idea of neuroplasticity, that the brain can change over time, was resisted for a long time. So as psychology was developing in the 20th century, people like the behavioralists like B.F. Skinner were like, no, we can't have this brain changing, because the brain's changing. What's constant about it? That's not going to work. But there was this, undercurrent of, no, there's neuroplasticity, and to completely compress the history of 20th and 21st century neuroscience. Neuroplasticity is the thing today that we in our brains can change. We are literally recreating our brains right now by what we're doing, David. I mean, it's so exciting. So what Len would tell me is, well, actually, this idea is really, really old. And this is where ancient wisdom can bring things to contemporary science. He said neuroplasticity goes back to what I read in Romans chapter 12, where Paul says, they talks about the renewal of your minds. So present your bodies a living sacrifice, it says, and that you will have this renewal of the mind. That's neuroplasticity. This idea that as we submit ourselves to God in the Christian tradition, we will continue to be remade. So that's one element that's, I think, really powerful in this idea of change and development. The second thing then would be with quantum physics. Quantum physics has this idea in evolutionary theory of an emerging universe. So first of all, back to evolutionary theory. Evolutionary theory develops this idea that there is development. So, Einstein was resisted by the steady state model of the universe, and all the way up into the mid 50s. And then finally, I would say with the discovery of background radiation, Einstein's idea of the expanding universe was validated. So we see the universe as expanding and emerging. Of course, the whole idea of evolutionary science is that biological life continues to evolve and develop over time. So, I mean, those are ways I see hope and improvisation being a critical part of human life, human brain development, and something I think that gives me confidence that this is not just this idea of hope and improvisation is not just an idea, but also something that's part of our wiring and part of AI. One of the things that's amazing is as we continue to engage with these AI agents, we are part of their development and training. So it's an incredibly
Right.
generative idea that is this idea of improvisation.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, this idea of the jazz trombonist, which I played jazz trombone for a while, and it's really nice and easy to improvise because you don't have keys, you've got a slide. So you can really improvise on all those major minor scales as much as you want. And yeah, the audience typically loves that. Now, when you improvise, you still have that core foundation of the bass guitar, right? Or the drums, setting that beat and that metronome. So you kind of know, hey, here are, I don't want to say guardrails, but maybe here's kind of the lines or the sheet of music or maybe the tone of the music clef that I like, I need to be playing within. And so similarly, because as a core belief, God created us and we create machines. It's like something greater than me created me, right? Let's just very biologically, like my mother created myself with my father, and I, create things with my hands and my brain. So just very fundamentally keeping it simple, having that ability to improvise, not hallucinate like many AI technologies do today, but being able to incorporate those existential things that make us human, I think is so important. So we're going to move right on to future tech here in just a minute.
Let's talk about quantum and the future of technology.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm here with Greg, the AI and Faith Director. It's such a pleasure to chat with you here. If you're tuning in for the first time, go ahead and like and subscribe, and go ahead and follow Greg here on LinkedIn. Greg, so as we get into this final topic about the future of technology, what can we be thinking about if we're going to look maybe, let's just say 50 to 100 years out, be kind of a little bit more medium term in terms of our future? What are some things that, what you think really will be maybe timeless or, will be definitely some trends that we'll be seeing for our children and their children?
Well, certainly we're going to see artificial intelligence more and more a part of our lives. And I think that'll be combined with robotics, which will make it really powerful as a an embedded part of our lives. So I'll just say I'm old enough that I remember, I was maybe 5 miles away when Jobs and Wozniak created the personal computer. So I saw the emergence of the personal computer in our lives. I also saw the emergence of the smartphone. I remember right before, I think it was 1999, a friend of mine from Hewlett Packard was saying, "Oh yeah, a lot of things are going to be moved to our smartphones." And I know a lot of, like, David, this is probably a really funny comment to you because you're somebody, it's always been a part of your life. But for me, I saw how the smartphone gradually became a part that's embedded in our lives. So I think the same thing is going to be part of what happens with AI and also combined with, robotics. So it'll be more integrated. That's one thing. I mean, I don't know if that's some great insight, but I can speak from history to say it gradually moves into where we are and becomes much less, shocking, I would say.
Yeah.
I think what we won't lose, though, in that is what we've already talked about is we're still going to need to have human interaction. I mean, and
Right.
this will change. We may have within human interaction some, AI feature that will be part of our human interaction. We may,
Right.
We may interact through our AIs at some level, especially if we include then, virtual reality, et cetera. There may be some additional elements, but I think we will always need our own connection, which I would call. And now I'm going to sound old school, so you can your viewers can write me off a little bit as this, but I do think being in the same room, talking with people, sharing meals, that is just part of our history as human beings. I don't think that's going to That need is going to change. Now, what we've got to be careful about, as we've seen with the smartphone and with social media, is we utilize technology to support that. You know what I mean? So sometimes to put away, if the robot that is in our future, whatever it will be called, can make our meals, to make our meals together, because there's something that's really important. You think back again in our history as human beings, when you had the kill and you brought it back to the group or the tribe and you had that meal together, that was such an important part of life. And I know I'm doing a little bit of retro here instead of future, but I just don't want to lose that because that's a part of religious traditions. It's a part of just human traditions more broadly. I'm also interested, and maybe you can join me as a conversation partner here, in what I know you're interested in quantum computing. Can I ask you a question? Like, what do you think that will bring to the connection with AI?
Yeah, good question. And we've had a couple of quantum experts on the show as well. I would check episodes 30 to 40 if you're interested in quantum focus. Quantum's super interesting, right? Because traditionally we thought computers could just do zeros and ones. But now there's this qubit that exists. It exists kind of like here and there at the same time. It can also be both or none. And also there's this like symmetrical pattern that happens where kind of one qubit affects another. I think it brings in a lot of the metaphysical things and neuroscience things that are more in your background, Greg, especially around sound and senses, but also this idea that potentially there's quantum parallels and atoms can be teleporting and transporting. Now, obviously, we have not figured out teleportation, and we're not to the level of where the Jetsons are. We're flying through space on our consumer car or our little aircraft, but we are seeing some really interesting investments being made, especially in efficiency. And I think one of the bigger concerns is kind of like that security layer when the current cybersecurity would be obsolete. So people would say it'd be post quantum cryptography ready. So a lot of people are kind of archiving all of those hash codes now, so that when quantum comes in 10 years, maybe 15, maybe 20, we'll be ready for that. But I think on a more human level, yeah, having more integration with technology can, yes, maybe be helpful. But I would also say too that for 2 years I was on a social media fast and was not actually on social at all. And those are some of the most rewarding experiences. And still, I will go out to the mountains and things like that. Finally, I'll say this: there are some kind of extreme futurist robotics that would say, yeah, we'll have kind of robot spouses or robot intimate physical partners, and I believe that that will be a form of idolatry. That will actually be a form of distraction from the real reason why we're created, which is for human connection. So yeah, I believe that hopefully maybe the world will end before we'll get to that place where robots are, taking over and, producing children on behalf of us. Some iRobot scenarios coming up, but
Right.
there's some
Right.
folks out there that think that, yeah, maybe, that an extension of what kids are doing now today, which, I'm just as guilty as it is, having a therapist on ChatGPT or, asking, what does science say? Like, I'm not a therapist. Like, okay, I'm not a lawyer either. So yeah, I think, there's always going to be someone really pressing that envelope. And I think from a pure connection play, I mean, we see the data and the stats. I mean, depression is doubled in women globally and in the United States, and it's like up 52%, something like that. I saw a number. For men, men are actually committing suicide 4 times as much. Women are just mostly taking medicine and drugs and things like that. And then actually we have a loneliness epidemic, right? Where people are too afraid to go in person. We're seeing this in the younger generations as well, that it's hard to have that human connection, or even when you're out in public, like say hello and smile. Like, I just said hello to you and you're in your phone, like, come on, wake up. So should we be too concerned about quantum and biomedicine taking over? When bubonic plague and the swine flu were more of a threat, and candidly, land war has been more of a threat to humanity than some bio warfare. But yeah, I digress. In the context of quantum, I do believe that will you'll always have folks who will adopt that cutting edge technology. And then you're always going to have a grandma or a grandpa who doesn't even have a phone or an internet connection. They're sitting in a cabin, in the Rocky Mountains, where I would prefer to be, half of the year. Yeah, I think that from a perspective of quantum adoption and quantum technology, we are seeing a lot of investments into that. But again, quantum is very energy dependent, and we still have major energy issues globally. And some of our speakers have more expertly spoken about that. But I don't know. I will never marry a robot spouse. Maybe my grandchildren will, but hopefully I'm gone by then. I don't know if you've seen the show Westworld. It's not exactly like
Yeah,
a
yeah,
religious show or anything, but it's really interesting to see that, maybe there'll be a world where we won't be able to recognize the robots. But from a
yeah.
divine point of view, like, it's like, okay, and from going back to maybe more of my Christian roots, it's like, all right, there is a being in this world that we don't understand, and that being knew you, right, before you were even a thought in your mother's womb. And I think
Mhm.
that's really empowering to give us purpose in a world where, disconnection is commonplace now.
Yeah, I mean, and that goes back to why I'm working on this piece that the AI made for us, is that I always want to keep that focus on how is this technology serving us, and
Right.
like at AI and Faith, we want to influence and have a positive connection with people in the industry, which we do, with the public, part of which is this interview, so we get connection with these ideas getting out to a broader swatch of people, and then also the religious communities that we're connected with. And I think that that middle section or last section I just talked about is where we can train ourselves to use AI well. And like you said, being off social media for 2 years, that's a gift to yourself. And I think it's not hard to realize that this is what religions have talked about: being away. The Buddha would spend time in meditation during the monsoon season. Jesus went up to the mountains to pray. As we hear, to move away from the crowd. So that's something we want to keep in our use of AI. I know we're almost at time, but let
So
me just
good.
say,
I
I
love
think
that,
one
by the
other
way.
aspect. Sorry, go ahead, David.
I was just gonna say I love that every major, it's like the religious practices may divide us, but what keeps us connected is, well, there's at least a god or multiple gods, and there's a communication with said divinities. And so having a practice where you communicate with your divine creator or your faith belief is actually good for your health. So I'm glad that we had an emphasis on that in this show.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'd be happy to wrap up there, but I'll just say that I think there's also this question of the singularity which comes in, and
Right.
my own reading from my friends who are in biology and so on is like that absolute kind of Ray Kurzweil singularity doesn't seem technically possible, but I think something where we fuse more seamlessly with AI agents and with computing will probably be in our future, through whatever means that will be. And again, I know this. I'm just going to ride this horse one more time. The key will be, can they be supportive of what it means to be human? And we
Right.
understand what that means. So let's keep using our AI in that way.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Greg, this was such an awesome show. What is kind of the best way for people to stay connected with you if people want to kind of get in touch with you?
Well, certainly, through LinkedIn, you can find me there. My email at AI and Faith, I think you're going to be able to project it, which is great. G Cootsona, just my last name with G before it, at aiandfaith.org. There it is. Yeah. So I'd be happy to hear more from you, and actually to your insights. If there's something I said that was provocative, or you said I'm not quite sure I agree, or here's why I really agree, love to hear about that. And do look up AI and Faith. We have all these great experts from vast number of religious traditions, particularly the great five world religions. And what they bring is really something special. So I would encourage you to connect with them. Yeah, there you go. There's some of our podcast work. We have a newsletter, and we just love you to be involved with what we're about.
Yeah, love that. Well, Greg, it was such a pleasure having you on the show today. And for those of you who are tuning in, our faithful followers, really appreciate you. Greg, thank you so much for being on the show.
David, I wasn't able to hear that last part. I'm sorry. For some reason, my
I just said thank
was
you
was
so
muted for me.
much for being on the show. It was really great to have you on the show today. And you said some very thought-provoking things as well. The tech singularity comment, I think we're gonna have to clip that and get some interesting debates going on in the comments. But yeah, there was a lot of really good things today. We'll have to have you on the show again, actually. And maybe in the fall we'll come back and have you as another guest on the show.
I had my audio was not working at the last part, but I will just say thank you, David. It's great we've gotten to connect over the past few months, which has been wonderful. I love your energy and your insights. So thanks for being on the show.
All right, take care.